Hey, happy Saturday, Facebook. Big Papa here. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Doses, an early version with your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Brian+Post. This morning, I'm going to talk to you about parentified children at home and at school because I had a question that came in just this morning from one of my Instagram followers, young single and foster mom, who's just doing an awesome job with her one of her children that she's asked me questions about. And the question was, he has been doing really good at home and we're making great strides and making great leaps and bounds and results. And I want to know how to help with school because he's parentified and he seems to want to mother his classmates more than he wants to take care of himself. And so it's a bit of an issue. And it's such a great question. I wanted to come on Facebook Live and share it because that way it's archived. I could do a video on Instagram, but it's not archived. And so it doesn't make sense to me at this point. But I wanted to talk about it and I want to be able to send this to her. So this is for her specifically, but as with all questions, it is beneficial for all parents and all professionals. So with parentified children, what you have to understand is first how they become parentified. Typically, they are the older sibling in a sibling group. They may be the second child, and they come from environments of emotional absence and oftentimes neglect, which means they are cast in the role of the parent. And they start at very early ages. Some children can be parentified as early as 3 years old. It seems to be when their kind of their thinking processes, which would be around 3, 4, come online and help them to be a little bit more abstract than just concrete. And then they start to be able to just, it's almost an evolutionary skill. It's an ingrained thing that we have within us that makes us want to take care of our siblings when they're in distress. If we've received any level of care, there's been enough modeling that goes on that helps influence our ability to take care of our little siblings. But that's what happens. These little young kids there's no one else there. There's no other parent there. There's no other adult there to keep them safe. And they start caretaking their siblings. And a lot of times this goes on for years before, foster DHS is notified, social workers are notified, and there's intervention. And then these kids get placed in foster care homes. Well, they've grown up with these imprints of responsibility to care for their siblings. And they literally see them as children. They become their children. And in the process, they become highly independent. So they don't easily allow themselves to depend on other adults because other adults have not demonstrated the ability to have any kind of regulatory influence in their lives and oftentimes have been identified as threats. So their brain pathways form around them being the caretaker, which pushes them up in this level of maturity around caring for their siblings and others and being hyper independent and unwilling in most instances to be taken care of. And this can be really challenging for parents, both in the home, and it can also, as my Instagram mom is saying, can follow the child to the school, and we don't always know how to address it. And so once you understand that the reason this child is parentified comes from a systematic and consistent and kind of predictable experience of trauma, being left alone and there not being anyone else, and the child having to figure out how to soothe the other little sibling, or otherwise there's all this crying and there's all this, potentially injury and all this risks to being perpetrators coming and hurting the children. And children experience such horrible things. Then it gives you some framework as to why this child doesn't just allow you to take care of them, because they have imprints in their brainstem, in their brain, that say, I must keep myself safe and I must keep my sibling safe. And then that just carries over to children who act hyper mature and this is important, they act hyper mature and they act hyper independent. And at some level, that is all locked in, and that's who they are. But at another level, at an emotionally developmental level, they are still children. And not only that, but they are children who have missed oftentimes these huge milestones in their own emotional development. So there is a lot of conflict within this child for how to settle into this new environment, how to be a child, yet how to trust that my siblings can be taken care of, that I can be taken care of, and how to move into co-regulation with an adult figure. So to get straight to the point, the best way to approach a parentified child is paradoxical. It is actually to encourage them to care for maybe one sibling, or not just full time or anything ridiculous like that. But when you have needs as a parent, encourage the child to actually do things for you. Encourage the child to help you in a very adult way, because remember, this is how the child sees themselves. So don't push, but allow the child to do these things for you, these parental things, almost like you would be asking your spouse to do. Honey, could you go, get the dishes out of the dishwasher? Honey, could you go set the table? Honey, could you go check on your brother, check on your sister? But I want you to do this in a very conscious way. Honey, come here for a minute, sit on my lap. Let me give you a hug. Thank you so much. You're such a grown up. I love you so much. And you're nurturing them on the other side of allowing them this parental flexibility. Because what you don't oftentimes realize is when you start trying to take away these parental responsibilities from this child, you think you're doing it because it's going to make them feel better and because they should get to be children, but you're actually threatening them. You're actually overwhelming the framework in their brain, the blueprints in their brain that says, I am responsible for myself and for the care of my siblings. So when you start trying to remove them from that role, from that responsibility, you're literally challenging the very core of who they've grown up believing that they are. You don't want to do that. You want to be very flexible and very gentle around that. And so by encouraging them to do these otherwise adult things, you take away the stress, you take away the anxiety, and then as soon as you start to take away the stress and the anxiety, what you will notice is there will start to be moments where they will regress. So you might, you could ask the child in this one day to empty the dishwasher. I want you to be very conscious about this, because it's very easy to take this child for granted. And because they are so inclined to want to please you, they're so inclined to want to do these adult things because this is their blueprint, it's easy for them to just do it. So if you're not doing it, if you're not doing this, taking these suggestions consciously, it'll get to the place to where you ask the child to do something, empty the dishwasher one day, and they go do it. Then you ask them another day, and all of a sudden, because there's more security in their relationship now, because there's no demands to try to figure out food, because their brothers and sisters are actually happier on a moment-to-moment, hour-to-hour basis, there's actually, just because of the environment, you created this opportunity for them to relax. Now, when they start to relax, they will start to drop into those earlier emotional developmental stages that they didn't get to meet. So the next day you ask the child to empty the dishwasher, they may fall out on the ground and start having a tantrum. Now, if you're not conscious of this child, you may see that as a threat, and then you automatically shift into that child's just like every other child. Now they're being disrespectful. Now they're being defiant. Now they're being manipulative. They're not listening to me. They're not doing what I ask them to do. Now you're setting up a secondary control battle. When in reality, the regressed behavior you get is exactly what you want, because that's your opportunity to take care of the child. You've been waiting for that door to open up and invite you into that meeting, that earlier emotional developmental place, that place where that child is emotionally arrested. Because that's what happens with parentified children. They get emotionally arrested, and then they form all these defenses around being emotionally arrested, which are a byproduct of the parentification. So when they regress, when they start to demonstrate their overwhelm like a normal child would of their age, that's actually the window you've been looking for. You've been looking for the opportunity to meet them at that earlier emotional stage, and you go over and you say, honey, it's okay. I love you. You don't have to empty the dishwasher. That's daddy's job. Daddy can handle it. Come here. Come here. What's going on right now? What's going on right now? Sit with daddy. Let daddy love on you for a minute. You don't have to do that. I'll go do it. Or we can do it together if you want. Or you can go play. See how I just took the opportunity to go into that window? Go into that window, soothe that regressed child, soothe that little child, soothe that baby. And see, when you set up a dynamic like that, you're structuring your relationship with your child, one in which is non-threatening, and then it becomes emotionally supportive. So on the back end, so in schools, teachers who are experiencing these parentified children can go ahead and let them hold these roles. Go ahead and let them hold these mentoring roles. Benji, you're such a great mentor. I just love how you really take care of your classmates. That's so great. I appreciate how much you help me out. So what that does is that immediately allows Benji to relax. That doesn't put any pressure on Benji, because he's already wired for this. But the tendency for the adults is to try to take Benji out of the role. That's where the pressure gets created. So when you give Benji the opportunity to experience what he naturally feels good about, then you're removing the pressure. Then he can relax. And then as he relaxes, you will start to notice the opportunities when he's not as mature as you would otherwise think he is. But when he starts to demonstrate the immaturity, that's when you've got to support him in that younger emotional place. That's when you got to say, hey, Benji, come over here. Rub his back. Rub his back. Look in his eyes. So you're such a good kid. I appreciate you so much. Why don't you take the day off today? Why don't you just hang out with everyone else today? And let me handle, the groups, and let me handle the organization of the toys, and let me handle the monitoring of the class, because you work so hard and I appreciate you so much. And tomorrow you can do it. You can help me out again. Okay. Does that sound good? You see how that just speaks to a child at an unconscious level that they don't even realize. So when you do that consistently enough, I remember recently I was out in Hampton, Virginia, doing a talk to some foster parents, and a foster parent, and this is an important thing, she was talking about her parentified child who's 10, 11, or 12 years old, and how much conflict she was having with this child. The first thing I asked her is, who was taking care of you when you were 10, 11, 12? See, she wasn't ready for that question. And the answer was, no one was. She was looking after herself. Her mom had to work. So she had to work really hard to take care of herself. And so now she's got this child in her home who's showing up in this parentified way, and she's wanting to take care of this child, and this child's wanting to take care of herself and sometimes her. And so then you have this dynamic, this tension that occurs. So sometimes as parents, you need to ask yourself that question. Is the child's parentified behavior threatening because it threatens your own sense of parenting? Right? So you've got to learn how to relax around that, pay attention to some of your own stuff, and don't let that become a challenge for you guys. Kevin says, does anything change with a 16-year-old? Same, it's the same method. Because once you remove the dynamic, so what's going to happen, Kevin, is as soon as you ask your child to do something, in that parental behavior, encourage it. They will relax. They will either go do it or they'll regress. Either way, you're winning. Because if they go do it, they've relaxed, they feel loved and accepted by you because you're giving them their natural role. And these children will grow up and they will be caretakers anyway. They are already blueprinted for this, so they are going to be caretakers. They will be the adult who's always taking care of someone else. But the key is you want them to grow up with the consciousness that it is great to take care of others, but it is okay to take care of yourself and to allow yourself to be taken care of. So with the 16-year-old, you give them those tasks. And if they go do it, they relax because it's a natural byproduct of their blueprints. But if they don't, if they regress, if they get overwhelmed and they can't do it, or they whine or they cry, that's perfect too, because they're giving you an invitation into that emotional window. They're giving you an opportunity to say, hey, Come here. Put your arm around him, because you think you're putting your arm around a 16-year-old, but you're really putting your arm around that 5-year-old, right? I want you to feel that. So any opportunity, anytime you can get that regress behavior from that parentified child, oh God, that's the good stuff. It's the good stuff, because it's like they're opening up their state level of memory, and they're letting you go into one of those disorganized folders, and they're allowing you to go in and help them organize it again. And so I felt an emotional charge as soon as I said, you're not putting your arm around a 16-year-old, you're putting your arm around a 5-year-old. See that 5-year-old neglected, overwhelmed child, that child who did the best they could to take care of their brothers and sisters. And when you say it's okay, say it's okay to that scared 5-year-old. Whew, gosh, I feel that right now. Vicky says, even a 20-year-old, Vicky knows, even a 20-year-old, it's the same dynamic. And so what happens when you build that relationship, you start to create that trust and that co-regulation, right? Because when you are actually asking them to do things, you're actually creating co-regulation. Their brains haven't ever been wired for that. So that's a new experience for them. And then when they drop into that earlier regress place and you meet them in that emotional window, in that emotional place, you're creating that co-regulation again. And what you're doing in the process is you're turning on their oxytocin response. See, that's what creates the strength of that relationship, the power of that relationship. So by doing that, creating that co-regulation dynamic, it then allows them to be able to hear you as a parent in a different way. So you take the opportunities when you can. You say, honey, when you were a child, you had to take care of your brothers and sisters. And this is where I go back to let them feel you instead of just hear you. So you think about it. You think about your child. You put your child in your mind's eye and in your heart. You think about this 5-year-old, dirty and grimy and, trying to take care of these little siblings who were scared and overwhelmed and dirty and grimy, and allow that emotion to resonate with you. And then tell them the story. Tell them the story of how they got to that place of parentification. Tell them that emotional story. Let them feel you. And then you say, you're my child now. And I'm never gonna not take care of you. And I appreciate so much when you help me out with your brothers and sisters, but you don't have to do it. If you want to do it, that's fantastic, but you don't have to do it, because I'm your parent, and you didn't have a parent to take care of you then, but you've